Fallout: The Valkyrian Wars. Author's note: this story is a crossover between the Fallout franchise and Summoning Japan, inspired by the fanfic Summoning America created by Dr.Doritos.md. This story aims to explore how pre-war America would react to the situation of its counterparts in the stories Summoning America and Summoning Japan. Credits are given to the respective authors and owners of the rights and intellectual properties. I also recommend reading the stories Summoning Japan and the fanfic Summoning America. They are really good. In this timeline, America already has the high level of technology from before the Great War and bases around the globe. Imagine a mix of real America with the pre-war America from the Fallout universe. Vault Tech doesn't exist, and House was born earlier in the timeline. The internet exists for civilian use, and Big MT is a government research and development department. The Enclave and FEV don't exist, and the Resource Wars and the Great War didn't append, but otherwise, there are no more differences. With that said, let's begin. I hope you enjoy it. Chapter 1: Transfer of a Nation. April 25, 2040, Washington, D.C., 48 hours before the transfer. In the Oval Office of the White House, President Cordelia Angela Turing House reviews reports on global economics and geopolitics. Suddenly, a young man, Stephen, bursts into the office, visibly nervous and in a state of alarm. Madam President, the USSA has detected a massive storm forming in Hawaii, of gigantic proportions, he exclaims, out of breath. President House, the youngest in United States history, pauses her reading and fixes her gaze on the young man, her expression firm yet vibrant with energy. Calm down, Stephen. What kind of storm are you referring to? She asks. Before he can respond, the phone rings. The president picks it up. This is President House, who's speaking. Madam President, this is Dr. Kyan, Chief Meteorologist at the USSA. I presume you've been informed about the storm. It's growing exponentially and spreading across the globe, Dr. Kyan reports, her tone grave. How is that possible? The president asks, surprised. We don't know, Madam President. But according to our projections, this storm could become more powerful than Hurricane Sandy or Katrina, Dr. Kyan replies. President House, inheriting the analytical mind of her father, Robert Edwin House, a genius in mathematics, robotics, and CEO of Robco Industries, begins mentally calculating the possibilities. How long until the storm reaches the mainland and we lose contact with Hawaii? She asks. Approximately 6 hours until we lose contact with Hawaii. By tomorrow, it will hit the California coast and cover much of the globe, Dr. Kyan informs her. Stephen, initiate preparations to declare a national state of emergency. I want a meeting with the National Security Council as soon as possible. Contact the Navy and Air Force. Suspend all air and maritime traffic until the storm subsides. And prepare the public relations team, the president orders. Yes, Madam President. Stephen responds, rushing out to carry out her orders. Returning to the call, the president asks, what are your recommendations, Dr. Kyan? Make the necessary preparations and hope for the best, Madam President. Perhaps, see the day after tomorrow. Dr. Kyan replies, attempting to lighten the tension. The president gives a faint, sarcastic smile. It can't be that bad, can it? I sincerely hope not, Madam President. But better safe than sorry. I recommend mobilizing all emergency services and the National Guard for disaster support, Dr. Kyan suggests. Noted. I'll make some calls. Keep me updated, Doctor, the president says, ending the call. Alone, President House sits in her chair, staring at the wall. Why me, she thinks, feeling the weight of her decisions. Through the Oval Office window, she watches the sun disappear, obscured by dark, threatening clouds. 2 days later. The stormy sky begins to calm, the clouds dissipating to reveal a blue sky and a radiant sun. Has the worst passed? The president asks, standing in the center of the emergency operations room, her stoic gaze fixed on the monitors surrounding her. Scientists, officers, and government officials work frantically, trying to understand what happened. The president addresses the team, all right, ladies and gentlemen, let's figure out what's going on. Dr. Mobius, a scientist, raises his hand. The storm and the communications blackout are related. We've lost contact with everything beyond our borders. The last messages we received indicate the storm wasn't confined to a single location. The president feels a chill, mentally assessing the consequences of losing contact with bases and allies. Each thought is more terrifying than the last, but she maintains her composure, aware of her responsibility to keep the team focused. On one of the screens, news broadcasts show images of the storm, reporting its end. The president orders, "Let's issue a statement to the nation. We'll resolve this together." Stephen leaves to carry out her orders. In the following days, the United States faces an unprecedented crisis. Contact with the rest of the planet ceases entirely. At the northern and southern borders, where there was once land, there is now a vast, crystal-clear ocean. In the Oval Office, the president meets with scientists and officers, including Dr. Nagel from the USSA. She is incredulous as she receives the reports. Everything's gone? Canada and Mexico aren't where they should be. The European Commonwealth and Alaska have disappeared too, she asks. General Russell Ward, head of the Department of Defense, presents the latest report. "Madam President, reconnaissance flights have confirmed that Alaska is a few miles to the north. Our overseas bases appear to be on islands scattered along the northern, southern, eastern, and western coasts. There's no sign of the European Commonwealth. We've lost contact with them, but we've detected radio transmissions from the direction of the European continent. You'd better hear this." The general inserts a holotape into his Pip-Boy, playing an intercepted transmission. Atlantic Federation News Network. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Guilherme Coleman from AFNN with the morning news. The storm of the past few days has finally ended, the largest and most turbulent in the last decade. There were no major damages to the coasts or shipwrecks, and maritime restrictions have been lifted. Naval operations of the Atlantic Federation are expected to resume." In other news, territorial disputes over Ragnite between the Atlantic Federation and the Imperial Alliance continue. Tensions are expected to escalate between the two superpowers of the Europa continent. The United States of Finland has pledged economic and military support in case of conflict. This is Guilherme Coleman. That was the morning news. Back to music. The president, with a look of astonishment, murmurs, "Atlantic Federation? What's happening? This would be easier if our satellites were operational. Dr. Nagel, how long until we reactivate our orbital assets?" "Approximately 3 days for the mapping and communication satellites. The defense matrix's military satellites will take longer," Nagel replies. At that moment, the Oval Office door opens, and Dr. Mobius enters hurriedly. "Pardon the interruption, but we have news about our current situation," he announces. "Don't keep us waiting, Doctor. What have you discovered?" General Ward asks. "Ladies and gentlemen, it appears that the country, our bases, and assets have been transported to another planet. After detailed analysis of the interference, we found it similar to the waves of the molecular relay," Mobius explains. Everyone in the room pales, as if they've seen a ghost. The president looks at Mobius and says, "Are you saying we're no longer on Earth and that the storm caused something akin to our teleportation technology?" "Yes, madam," Mobius confirms. The president makes a decision: "We'll establish contact with this Atlantic Federation. Send a reconnaissance plane. Let's find out who they are." Later, in the Oval Office, the president and her team review images captured by a reconnaissance plane, displayed on an experimental laptop developed by Robco in partnership with Turing Computing Limited and Big MT. It's a new, lightweight Pip-Boy model with advanced transistors, capable of transmitting and receiving video and audio. The images show a port city on the coast of a region known as Erinden, the maritime city of Goran, adjacent to a major Atlantic Federation naval base. In the civilian port, there are cargo ships of all sizes, but what stands out is the military port, filled with massive battleships. Curiously, no aircraft carriers are visible. Strange. No aircraft carriers in the military port. Are they at sea? The president comments, with a mix of curiosity and concern. We don't know, Madam President. But did you notice? There are no visible anti-aircraft defense systems. No missiles or anti-aircraft guns, General Russell Ward observes. The President declares, I agree. It's odd that they lack defenses against aircraft. We also haven't received any warnings for invading their airspace. Prepare an expedition to establish contact with the Atlantic Federation. The 10th Fleet is off the Columbia Commonwealth coast. Send the fleet with an ambassador. Stephen asks, who are we sending? I know just the person, President House responds with confidence. Meanwhile, at the Atlantic Federation base, chaos reigns in the command room. Officers heatedly debate the incident. Admiral Eduardo, with a serious expression, questions, what exactly happened? An officer responds, an unidentified flying object overflew the base, sir. We don't know what it is. It resembled the aircraft prototypes we're developing, but with significant differences. It had a blue circle with a white star and red stripes on its wings. And it flew at an altitude over 30 times higher than our prototypes. The officer continues, the object circled the city and base for about an hour. Then it headed west and disappeared over the horizon. Admiral Eduardo makes a decision, we must investigate and determine where this aircraft came from and whether it poses a threat. Or perhaps it's a scheme by the Imperial Alliance. We'll send a squadron of ships to follow the direction the aircraft went. The squadron will depart as soon as possible. On the same day, in Portland, Oregon, East Central Commonwealth, at the Wellington family residence, Renato Wellington is on the porch, sipping coffee and surveying the damage caused by the mysterious storm in his backyard. He gives an order to his robot butler, Mr. Handy Bobsworth, clean up the yard, Bobsworth. Yes, Mr. Wellington, the robot replies, immediately starting the task. As Renato watches Bobsworth, his wife, Urza, appears and says, darling, there's a call for you. It seems urgent. All right, dear, I'll take it, Renato replies, heading to the estate's office. Picking up the phone, he says, Wellington residence, how can I help? On the other end, Stephen, President House's young assistant, asks, are you alone right now, Mr. Renato? One moment, let me close the door for privacy, Renato responds, returning to the call. I'm alone now. What's going on? Stephen explains, I have a direct request from the President. What I'm about to say is confidential, but we need your help. Okay, let me grab a notepad, Renato says, preparing to take notes. Stephen continues, the entire country, including our bases, has been transported to another planet. We've discovered there are other civilizations on this world. We've sent some photos via Robco mail. Renato opens the email on the Robco system and sees images of a port city with various civilian and military ships. They look like battleships, Renato observes. I'm no expert in naval warfare, Stephen admits. We need you to join the 10th Fleet to establish contact with this civilization. The fleet is currently off the Columbia Commonwealth coast. Renato nods, even though he's on the phone, and responds, understood. Tell the President I'm honored to be chosen for this mission. I'll do that, Mr. Ambassador. Good luck. Stephen concludes, ending the call. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Discoveries and Encounters. April 28, 2040, Washington, D.C., White House Situation Room. President Cordelia Angela Turing House stood at the head of the long conference table, her eyes locked on the array of holographic displays flickering to life around the room. The satellites were finally operational, their feeds streaming in after days of frantic recalibration. Dr. Nagel from the USSA manipulated the controls on his Pip-Boy, projecting a three-dimensional map of the planet onto the central holoscreen. The room was filled with a tense silence, broken only by the hum of machinery and the occasional murmur from the assembled scientists, generals, and advisors. All right, Dr. Nagel, walk us through it, the President said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion etched into her features. She crossed her arms, her analytical mind already racing ahead to the implications. Dr. Nagel adjusted his glasses and zoomed in on the projection. Madam President, based on the orbital scans and gravitational readings, we've confirmed our earlier suspicions. This isn't Earth. The planet we're on now is approximately twice the size of our home world, larger land masses, deeper oceans, and a gravitational pull that's only slightly stronger due to some atmospheric compensations we don't fully understand yet. But the real revelation is our position. He gestured, and the map rotated to highlight the continental United States, now isolated in a vast expanse of blue. We're situated in the middle of an enormous ocean, which we've tentatively named Atlantis based on intercepted transmissions and navigational charts from the reconnaissance flights. This ocean acts as a natural barrier, or perhaps a bridge, between two major continents. To our east lies what appears to be the continent of Europa, home to the Atlantic Federation and the Imperial Alliance we've heard mentioned in their broadcasts. To our west, across another stretch of this ocean, is Vinland, which seems to be a separate landmass with its own powers, including the United States of Vinland they referenced. General Russell Ward leaned forward, his brow furrowed. So we're smack in the middle of it all? No neighbors except water on all sides? That changes everything strategically. The president nodded, her mind piecing together the puzzle. It explains the loss of our borders. Canada, Mexico, gone, replaced by this Atlantis Ocean. Our overseas bases are now like outposts on scattered islands along the fringes. But why us? And how? Dr. Mobius, any updates on the molecular relay theory? Dr. Mobius, pacing near the back of the room, stopped and rubbed his chin. The interference patterns match our teleportation experiments at Big MT, but on a scale we never imagined. It's as if the entire nation was displaced. No radiation spikes, no seismic anomalies beyond the storm itself. No escalating tensions toward what we fear might become a global conflict. Their broadcasts talk of territorial disputes over some mineral called ragnite. President House stared at the map, the glowing outline of the US floating like an island nation in the vast Atlantis. Twice the size of Earth, that means more resources, more space, but also unknowns. We need to adapt quickly. General, bolster our coastal defenses. Dr. Nagel, keep scanning for any other anomalies. And Stephen, prepare a briefing for Congress. The American people deserve to know we're not just surviving, we're charting a new course. As the team dispersed to their tasks, the president lingered, gazing at the hologram. For the first time since the storm, a spark of determination outweighed the fear. This new world was vast, but so was the ingenuity of her nation. Meanwhile, off the coast of the Columbia Commonwealth, aboard the USS Enterprise, flagship of the 10th Fleet, Ambassador Renato Wellington gripped the railing of the USS Enterprise's bridge, the salty spray of the Atlantis Ocean misting his face as the massive nuclear-powered carrier cut through the waves. The 10th Fleet stretched out behind him, a formidable array of destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and the carrier's air wing on constant patrol, their advanced radar and sensor suites from Robco humming quietly as they scanned the horizon. Renato, a seasoned diplomat with a background in international trade, adjusted his tie nervously. This wasn't a negotiation over tariffs, this was first contact with an unknown civilization. Ambassador, we've got visuals on the approaching vessels, Captain Elena Ramirez announced from the command console. She pointed to the forward screens, where high-resolution cameras zoomed in on a squadron of ships emerging from the eastern horizon. They were classic battleships and heavy cruisers of early 20th century design, towering superstructures bristling with massive 305mm and 203mm naval guns in triple turrets, thick riveted armor plating, and smokestacks belching faint vapors from what appeared to be ragnite-fueled steam turbines. The lead vessel, marked with a blue wave emblem, flew the colors of the Atlantic Federation, no aircraft visible on any deck, no radar masts or missile launchers, just rows of anti-ship cannons and secondary batteries suited for surface gunnery duels. They are closing to visual range. No air cover, no electronic emissions we can detect beyond basic radio. Primitive, but heavily armed. Renato nodded, his heart pounding. Hail them on open frequencies. Let's make this peaceful from the start. The communications officer complied, broadcasting a message in clear English. This is the United States 10th Fleet, representing the United States of America. We come in peace and seek diplomatic contact. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. Moments later, a response crackled over the speakers, translated in real time by the fleet's linguistic processors. The language was similar to English, with a distinct Europan accent. This is Admiral Eduardo of the Atlantic Federation Navy, commanding the squadron from Goran Base aboard the AFS Vanguard. Your flying machine violated our airspace earlier. Explain your presence in these waters immediately. Captain Ramirez glanced at Renato, who stepped forward to the microphone. Admiral Eduardo, I am Ambassador Renato Wellington of the United States. We apologize for any intrusion. Our reconnaissance aircraft was exploratory only. We've recently arrived in this region due to unforeseen circumstances. We wish to establish relations, share information, and ensure mutual security. May we approach for a parley? There was a long pause, the Federation squadron holding formation about 2 miles out. Their massive gun turrets swiveled slowly toward the American fleet, a clear sign of tension, but no shots were fired. Finally, the Admiral's voice returned, laced with suspicion and awe. Flying machine? Your contraption soared higher and faster than any prototype we've tested, impossible for our engineers. Very well, Ambassador. Send a delegation to the Vanguard. No more than 5, unarmed as per our customs. Keep your ships at distance. We have many questions. As Renato boarded a swift landing craft with a small security detail, discreetly equipped with concealed laser pistols under their suits, a pair of USF-44 fighters streaked overhead in a low pass, their afterburners roaring as a subtle show of air dominance. The Federation crews on deck below pointed skyward in stunned silence, their world devoid of anything beyond experimental biplanes that barely cleared treetops. Aboard the AFS Vanguard, a behemoth of steel and gunpowder with decks vibrating from the rumble of its turbine engines, Admiral Eduardo greeted him stiffly on the main deck, flanked by officers in peaked caps and wool greatcoats. The air smelled of oil, cordite, and an exotic mineral tang, ragnite, no doubt. Welcome aboard, Ambassador Wellington. Your vessels, flat-decked behemoths without a single gun turret in sight? And those winged demons in the sky? You hail from beyond Vinland, perhaps a secret imperial project. Renato smiled diplomatically, clasping the Admiral's gloved hand. A place far from here, Admiral, now our shared seas. We're neighbors in this vast Atlantis. Let's discuss trade, borders, and perhaps how our technologies might complement each other. As the discussions began in the Admiral's wood-paneled wardroom, with nautical charts unrolled and tales exchanged over strong tea, the vast tech chasm yawned wide, the Federation's might rooted in brute naval firepower, the Americans in skies unchallenged and seas uncontested. The first threads of alliance, or rivalry, began to weave across the churning waves. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3, The Weight of Proof. May 2, 2040. Aboard AFS Vanguard, 400 nautical miles west-southwest of Goran. Neutral waters of the Atlantis Ocean. The wardroom of the Atlantic Federation battleship AFS Vanguard felt smaller than its actual dimensions, the air heavy with the acrid scent of cigar smoke mingling with the faint, metallic tang of ragnite fuel seeping from the ship's engines. Polished oak panels lined the walls, adorned with nautical charts of Europa's coasts and framed portraits of Federation heroes from the First Europan War. At the head of the long table sat Admiral Eduardo, his weathered face set in a mask of stern authority, his uniform's gold braid catching the dim light from the overhead lamps. Flanking him were his flag captain, a burly man with a neatly trimmed beard named Captain Harlan Voss, Colonel Dimitri Hale, a DUR intelligence officer from Federation counter-espionage with sharp eyes that missed nothing, and 2 political attachés, Ms. Ilara Kotorina and Mr. Thorn Gerrick, dispatched in haste from Ramazel, the administrative center of the Atlantic Federation. Across the table sat Ambassador Renato Wellington, his diplomatic poise unshaken despite the tension, accompanied by 4 American naval officers in crisp, dark blue uniforms, Lieutenant Commander Aria Chen, a communications specialist, Major Elias Grant, an intelligence liaison, Ensign Lila Torres, a young aide, and Commander Marcus Hale, whose shared surname with the colonel had prompted a brief, awkward chuckle earlier. No weapons were in sight. The Americans had surrendered their concealed laser pistols at the gangway as a gesture of good faith, but the atmosphere crackled with unspoken distrust. Admiral Eduardo leaned forward, tapping his cigar ash into a brass tray, his voice gravelly and laced with skepticism. All right, Ambassador Wellington, let's cut through the fog. You've spun quite the tale over the last hour. A great storm, one that engulfs your entire nation, this United States of America, with a territory the size of a continent, you said, rips it from another world altogether and plops it right in the heart of the Atlantis Ocean. And now here you are, sailing these waters in ships that look like floating fortresses without a single visible cannon. You expect us to swallow this fantasy? Because your flying machines darted over our base like birds of prey, defying every principle of flight our engineers have ever scribbled on a blueprint. Colonel Hale crossed his arms, his thin lips curling into a sneer. It's preposterous. Imperial spies have tried less convoluted deceptions. Metal birds that soar 30 times higher than our prototypes. Faster than a Ragnite-powered locomotive. If this is some Vinland ploy or alliance sabotage, confess now and save us all the headache. Ms. Ilura Katerina, the sharp-eyed attaché with a Europan lilt to her voice, tilted her head, her notebook open but untouched. And your claim of another world, Earth, you called it. No Ragnite disputes, no ancient Valkyrie legends. Just storms that move continents. We've seen strange things in Europa, but this strains credulity. Renato met their gazes evenly, his hands folded on the table. He had anticipated this, disbelief was the first barrier in any first contact. Gentlemen, madam, I don't expect blind faith. Stories are cheap, evidence is what builds bridges. What I ask is for you to witness with your own eyes. He reached down to the floor beside his chair and lifted a sleek, metallic briefcase onto the table's surface. It was compact, no larger than a standard diplomat's portfolio, its gunmetal exterior etched with interlocking logos, the stylized brain in a jar of Big MT, the robotic arm of Robco Industries, and the binary code tree of Turing Computing Limited. The device gleamed under the wardroom lights, its seamless construction free of any visible rivets or welds, nothing like the bulky, Ragnite-infused machinery the Federation officers were accustomed to. Captain Harlan Voss leaned in, his brow furrowing in curiosity despite himself. What in the ancient's name is that? Looks like something out of a Europan folktale, a magic box. It's an experimental prototype, Renato explained calmly, his tone matter-of-fact as if discussing the weather. Developed collaboratively by our nation's premier research facilities. This isn't powered by your Ragnite, it uses a microfusion cell, drawing from atomic energy harnessed in ways that allow for portable, near-limitless power. It projects holographic data, three-dimensional images reconstructed from our satellite networks, archives, and real-time scans. Think of it as a window into our world, not just a map on paper. Mr. Thorn-Gerrick, the other attaché, adjusted his spectacles, his voice tinged with intrigue. Holographic? Like illusions made of light? We've experimented with Ragnite lenses for signaling, but nothing that floats in the air. The intelligence colonel snorted dismissively. Sounds like parlor tricks. Imperial illusionists pull similar stunts at carnivals. Prove it's not smoke and mirrors, or some hidden projector. Renato nodded, unflappable. Very well. Allow me to demonstrate. With a soft click, he flipped open the latches. The briefcase hummed to life, a low vibration resonating through the table as its internal fusion cell activated, emitting a faint, ethereal blue glow from vents along the sides. A compact control panel unfolded like a blooming flower, touch-sensitive screens and holographic keys materializing in mid-air above it. The Federation officer's eyes widened, even the skeptical colonel leaned forward involuntarily. Renato's fingers danced across the touchscreen, inputting commands with practiced ease, far more fluid and responsive than any mechanical switchboard or Ragnite dial. Suddenly, a shimmering field of light erupted from the device, projecting upward into the air above the table. The hologram coalesced with a soft whir, forming a detailed, rotating map of the continental United States. It was breathtaking in its clarity, vibrant blues for oceans, greens for forests, browns for mountains rising in miniature, three-dimensional relief. Rivers snaked realistically across plains, and major cities pulsed with simulated lights, tiny representations of bustling metropolises. Labels faded in elegantly. Washington, D.C., New York, Los Angeles, regional divisions like the Columbia region and East Central region. The wardroom fell silent, save for the hologram's faint hum. Admiral Eduardo's cigar dropped from his lips, forgotten, as ash scattered across his uniform. "By the Valkyria," he whispered, his voice hoarse with awe. He reached out tentatively, his hand passing through the ethereal image of the Rocky Mountains, causing no distortion but sending a ripple of light across the projection. Captain Voss stood halfway out of his chair, mouth agape. "It's alive. Like looking through a portal. Our best cartographers couldn't dream of this. How does it float? No strings, no smoke." Ms. Laura Katerina S.'s eyes sparkled with fascination, her skepticism melting into wonder. She traced a finger along the holographic Mississippi River, watching digital water seem to flow. Incredible. The detail, the colors, the depth. This isn't magic, it's machinery beyond our wildest prototypes. Your fusion cell, it powers this without ragnite? No exhaust, no heat. Even Colonel Hale, though trying to maintain his composure, couldn't hide his intrigue. He poked at the hologram's edge, muttering, "Impossible. Ragnite can propel tanks, heal the wounded, but this? A map that dances in the air? If this is real." "It is real," Renato affirmed, gesturing to the projection. "This is our homeland, the United States of America, as it existed on our original world, Earth. A population exceeding 300 million souls, spanning from one ocean to another across our vast continental territory. Our advancements, ships like the USS Enterprise, propelled by nuclear reactors that could sail for years without refueling, aircraft that break the sound barrier, reaching speeds you might call impossible, robots that assist in every home and factory, from cleaning to complex computations. We didn't invade your world. That storm, a cataclysmic event mirroring our experimental molecular relay teleportation technology, displaced us here on a scale we never imagined. We awoke to find our borders gone, replaced by this vast Atlantis Ocean." He manipulated the controls again, and the hologram shifted seamlessly, zooming out to overlay recent satellite scans, the enormous Atlantis surrounding the displaced US, with the continent of Europa to the east, pinpointing Goron and Ramazel, and Vinland to the west. Scattered dots marked American overseas bases, now isolated islands. The admiral sat back, rubbing his temples, the weight of the revelation etching lines deeper into his face. But his eyes gleamed with a mix of caution and excitement. "If this device is but a taste of your technology, flying machines, endless power sources, it could tip the balance against the Imperial Alliance. Their ragnite grabs are pushing us to war's edge." Ms. Ilara nodded eagerly. "We must learn more. Imagine integrating this with our tanks, holographic battle maps in the field." Colonel Hale, still wary but visibly impressed, added gruffly, "Assuming this isn't the most elaborate ruse I've seen, what do you propose?" Renato deactivated the hologram with a tap, the image fading into a soft whine as the briefcase powered down. "We propose partnership, Admiral. Alliance, trade, shared knowledge for mutual defense. We're adrift in your world, but together we could forge something unbreakable. To build that trust, let's continue these negotiations on solid ground, your territory, perhaps Goron or Ramazel itself." Eduardo exchanged meaningful glances with his officers, the fascination in the room palpable. After a long pause, he extended his hand across the table. "Agreed, Ambassador. We'll escort your delegation to Goron first, then to Ramazel for formal talks with Federation High Command. But mark my words, one whiff of deceit, and our batteries will roar." Renato clasped the Admiral's hand firmly, a genuine smile breaking through. "To new horizons and shared wonders, then." As the handshakes went around, sealing the fragile accord, the Vanguard's engines rumbled to life, steering the squadron eastward toward Europa's shores. Outside, the American fleet trailed at a safe distance, their F-44 fighters etching contrails in the sky like guardians from another era. The Federation officers stole glances at the now-closed briefcase, their minds abuzz with the possibilities of American ingenuity. The divide between worlds had cracked open, revealing not just peril, but promise. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4, Shores of Wonder and Whispers of Shadow. May 3, 2040. Port of Goron, coastal region of the Atlantic Federation. Europa continent. The sun hung high over the bustling port of Goron, casting a golden sheen on the calm waters of the bay. What had been a routine day of cargo unloading and naval drills transformed into a spectacle as the horizon filled with the silhouettes of unfamiliar vessels. The American 10th Fleet approached in formation, led by the imposing bulk of the USS Enterprise, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier that dwarfed the Federation's battleships in both size and sleek design. Flanking her were destroyers and cruisers, their hulls smooth and radar-absorbent, devoid of the towering smokestacks and heavy gun turrets that defined European naval might. Instead, vertical launch systems and phased-array radars hinted at capabilities beyond imagination. On the docks, a crowd had gathered, dockworkers pausing mid-labor, merchants abandoning their stalls, families with children in tow, all drawn by rumors of the strange ships from the west. Whispers spread like wildfire. They say these vessels run on invisible fire, no smoke, no steam. Look at that flat top, it's like a floating airfield. And those flying machines, they roar like thunder. As the fleet eased into the harbor under Federation escort, the AFS Vanguard leading the way, the air filled with gasps and murmurs. A young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, pointing excitedly at the F-44 fighters idling on the Enterprise's deck. "Mama, are those dragons? They have wings." An elderly fisherman, leaning on his cane, shook his head in awe. "In all my years on the sea, I've never seen ships so clean. No belching fumes, no rattling chains. It's like they've tamed the ocean itself." Federation sailors on the docks maintained order, but even they stole glances, their disciplined facades cracking with curiosity. One ensign muttered to his comrade, "If their ships are this advanced, what else do they hide? We could use that against the Imperials." Ambassador Renato Wellington stood on the Enterprise's bridge, binoculars in hand, surveying the growing throng. "Captain Ramirez, ensure our air wing stays grounded for now, no need to overwhelm them further. This is about building trust, not a show of force." "Aye, Ambassador," Captain Elena Ramirez replied, her voice steady over the comms. "Docking procedures initiated. Security teams are ready to escort you ashore." As mooring lines were secured and gangplanks lowered, Renato descended with his delegation, met by Admiral Eduardo and a contingent of Federation officers. The Admiral extended a hand, his earlier suspicion tempered by cautious respect. "Welcome to Goron, Ambassador. Your arrival has stirred the pot, as they say. The people are eager to see these visitors from afar." Renato shook his hand firmly. "We're honored, Admiral. Let's hope this marks the beginning of a fruitful partnership." Unbeknownst to them, amid the crowd's sea of faces, a nondescript man in a worn overcoat observed everything with calculated detachment. His name was Victor Kraus, an operative of the East European Imperial Alliance, embedded in Goron under the guise of a traveling merchant. His eyes narrowed at the American ships, their alien contours, the absence of visible armaments, the subtle hum of advanced propulsion systems. "Not of this world," he whispered to himself, committing every detail to memory. A spy's instincts told him this was no Federation prototype, this was something revolutionary, a potential threat to the Empire's ambitions. As the delegation moved through the cheering crowd, children waving makeshift flags, vendors offering fresh bread and ragnite trinkets, Victor slipped away unnoticed, weaving toward a hidden telegraph office in the back alleys of Goron. Later that afternoon. Secure convoy en route to Ramazal. Interior Federation territories. The journey from Goron to Ramazal was a carefully orchestrated affair. A convoy of Federation armored cars and troop transports rumbled along the winding roads, escorted by light tanks rumbling on ragnite engines. Ambassador Wellington rode in the lead vehicle, a reinforced staff car with tinted windows, alongside Ms. Ilara Voss and Mr. Thorne Gerrick. The landscape unfolded in rolling hills and verdant fields, dotted with quaint villages that seemed frozen in a bygone era, no towering skyscrapers, no fusion-powered billboards, just the simple charm of European countryside. Inside the car, negotiations picked up where they had left off aboard the Vanguard. Renato spread out nautical charts on a fold-out table, pointing to key points in the Atlantis Ocean. Our proposal is straightforward: shared naval patrols to secure trade routes, technology exchanges in non-military fields, like medical advancements and communication systems, and a mutual defense pact against any aggressors, be they imperial or otherwise. Ms. Illara leaned forward, her eyes alight with interest. Your holographic device alone could revolutionize our command centers. In return, we offer Ragnite, our mineral that powers everything from engines to healing salves. But we'll need assurances. The Federation Council in Ramazel will demand proof of your intentions. Thorn nodded gravely. And details on your displacement. If more storms like that could occur, it affects us all. Renato assured them, our scientists are investigating. For now, we're committed to stability here. Meanwhile, back in Goron, as the sun dipped toward evening, Victor Krauss entered the dimly lit telegraph office, his forged credentials ensuring privacy. He composed a terse message on the clacking machine, encoding it with Imperial ciphers. To Imperial High Command, eyes only, unknown fleet arrived Goron. Self-identify as United States of America. Ships advanced beyond Federation tech, no smoke, flat decks for flying machines. Delegation en route Ramazel for talks. Potential threat to Ragnite operations. Request instructions. Agent Krauss. The telegraph operator, oblivious to the contents, sent the message crackling across hidden lines toward the Empire's heart. Victor slipped back into the shadows, his mind racing. If the Americans allied with the Federation, the balance of power in Europa could shatter. And the Empire would not stand idly by. As the convoy neared Ramazel's gates, Renato gazed out at the approaching city, its spires and fortifications a blend of medieval grandeur and industrial might. Little did he know, the ripples of their arrival had already reached darker shores. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5, Forged in Uncertainty. May 5, 2040. Ramazel, administrative capital of the Atlantic Federation. Europa continent. The Grand Council chamber in Ramazel's central citadel was a monument to Federation resolve, vaulted ceilings adorned with frescoes depicting historic naval victories, walls lined with polished mahogany bookshelves stuffed with leather-bound tomes on strategy and diplomacy, and a massive oval table carved from ancient oak at its heart. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the assembled dignitaries, their faces a mosaic of curiosity, wariness, and ambition. Outside, the city bustled under a crisp spring sky, oblivious to the pivotal talks unfolding within. At the head of the table sat Prime Minister Leonard Duval, flanked by Admiral Etienne Moreau, Ms. Elizabeth Laurent, a sharp-minded political attaché, Mr. Thierry Garnier, her counterpart in economic affairs, and a cadre of economic advisors and generals. They conversed in English, the common tongue bridging the divide, though their melodic Europan accents, rolling RS and softened consonants, lent a rhythmic cadence to their words, distinct from the crisp American diction. Charts of Ragnite deposits and trade routes lay spread before them, illuminated by oil lamps augmented with glowing Ragnite crystals. Opposite them, Ambassador Renato Wellington anchored the American delegation, Captain Elena Ramirez in civilian attire, Lieutenant Commander Aria Chen with a sleek Robco translator device at the ready, and Major Elias Grant, whose intelligence background made him a silent observer of every nuance. Renato's metallic briefcase rested conspicuously on the table, a silent testament to the wonders already demonstrated. Ambassador Wellington, Prime Minister Duval began, his voice resonant and measured, laced with that distinctive accent, your arrival has electrified Europa. The holograms, the flying machines, proof enough that you're no mere Vinland upstarts or imperial phantoms. But words are wind, let us speak plainly of mutual benefit. Renato nodded, opening a digital tablet projected from his Pip-Boy, a subtle flex that drew admiring glances. Prime Minister, the United States seeks a robust economic partnership. Trade in goods, technology exchanges where feasible, and joint ventures to secure our shared prosperity in this Atlantis Ocean. The Prime Minister steepled his fingers. The Federation welcomes commerce. Our Ragnite fuels industry, heals the wounded, powers our fleets. In exchange for your innovations, we offer access to our markets. But we know petrol, black oil from ancient Earth, and Ragnite, the blue lifeblood of Europa. What resources do you seek that we might provide? Renato leaned forward. Among others, uranium. A heavy metal ore, silvery and radioactive, essential for our energy reactors. It provides power cleaner and more enduring than oil or even uragnite, without the need for constant refueling. A ripple of confusion passed through the Federation side. Admiral Moreau furrowed his brow, his accent thickening slightly with puzzlement. Uranium? We've no such mineral in our catalogues. Our geologists chart ragnite veins and oil fields from the Europan spine to the coastal basins. Perhaps it is buried deep, like overlooked coal. Ms. Elizabeth Laurent scribbled notes furiously. If it is vital to your flat-deck behemoths, we shall scour our lands. But tell us, your interest in ragnite? Samples, perhaps, for your alchemists. Precisely, Renato replied with a diplomat's smile. Purely for study. Analyzing its properties could yield breakthroughs in energy and medicine, benefiting us both. Mr. Thierry Garnier interjected, his tone urgent and accented with a subtle lilt. Economics aside, Ambassador, we need more than trade. The East Europan Imperial Alliance claws at our borders, seizing ragnite deposits through shadow wars and brinkmanship. They are autocrats, expansionists, conquering neighbors under guises of unification. A Vinland ally bolsters us, but your skies and seas could shatter their fleets. Prime Minister Duval's expression darkened. And there is a deeper rot. The Imperials' hatred for the Darksons, Europa's ancient indigenous folk, with their dark blue-black hair and traditional patterned shawls. They are the continent's oldest ethnic group. Legend blames them for the Darkson calamity, a cataclysm that scarred Europa millennia ago, but nobody knows what happened. Stripped of last names, property, and dignity, they have faced centuries of prejudice. Renato raised an eyebrow. Persecuted how? Elizabeth Laurent spoke gravely, her voice laced with restrained fury and that Europan inflection. The Empire perpetuates this ancient bias, identifying Darksons only by first names and treating them as inferior, dirty, and misfortune bringers. Darkson hunts are systematic raids by dedicated squads, capturing them in settlements within imperial borders and even abroad. Victims are enslaved, executed, or worse. During wars, hunts intensify for forced labor, herding them into inhumane concentration camps, squalid pits surrounded by high-voltage electric fences and watchtowers. There, they are worked to death in ragnite mines, smelters, and arsenals, enduring whippings, starvation, and ethnic purges. Families are torn apart, communities razed. It is genocide masked as necessity, fueling their war machine while stereotypes persist. In Gallia, they are seen as smelly laborers, in the Federation, as dishonest commoners by the elite. Yet they endure, proud in their mining quarters and urban outskirts. The room fell silent. Renato's face paled, his mind flashing to America's own dark chapters, internments, segregations, but this was systematic extermination, raw and unyielding. He masked his horror with composure. Barbaric. Unacceptable. The United States stands against such atrocities. Duval nodded approvingly. Then ally with us formally. Economic ties first, joint patrols, resource shares. To seal it, we propose geological surveys, your experts and ours, combing Federation territories and coordinating with Finland. If uranium hides in our hills, we shall unearth it together. Agreed, Renato said firmly. Survey teams deploy within the week. Non-military fields prioritized, with mutual defense clauses. Handshakes sealed the accord amid murmurs of optimism. As the meeting adjourned, Renato slipped into an adjoining secure room, activating his Pip-Boy's encrypted quantum relay, a direct line to Washington, unjammable by Europan tech. Priority transmission to President House, he dictated, voice low. Negotiations fruitful, economic pact inked, ragnite samples en route for analysis. Uranium unknown here, joint surveys with Federation and Vinland approved. Critical, Imperials perpetrate Darkson genocide, hunts by squads, enslavement in camps with electric fences and forced labor in mines, ethnic purges, families destroyed. Analogous to our worst histories. Recommend vigilance. The message beamed across the ocean in femtoseconds. Meanwhile, Washington, D.C., White House Situation Room. Same day. President Cordelia Angela Turing House stood before the holographic world map, the pinpoint of Ramazal glowing like a beacon. Stephen handed her the incoming dispatch, her eyes scanning the text with predatory focus. Darkson hunts, concentration camps, she murmured, fists clenching. The weight of leadership pressed anew, this new world brimmed with promise, but shadows loomed. Stephen, summon Director Margaret Hale of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Full brief, infiltrate Imperial borders. Activate all assets in Goron and Ramazal. High-altitude reconnaissance flights masked as meteorological surveys. Satellites retasked for real-time imaging of camps, troop movements, and Ragnite facilities. We need eyes on the ground and in the sky, now. Yes, Madam President. Stephen saluted and hurried out. House turned back to the hologram, the US a defiant bastion amid the vast Atlantis. No more innocents in chains. Not on our watch. As dusk fell over Ramazal, the first joint survey teams mobilized, American fusion-powered drones humming alongside Ragnite jeeps, while Imperial whispers grew in the east. Alliances forged, but the forge glowed hot with uncertainty. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6, Shadows in the Spires. May 6, 2040. Imperial Palace, Schwarzgrad, capital of the East European Imperial Alliance. Europa continent. Deep within the labyrinthine halls of the Imperial Palace in Schwarzgrad, where marble columns rose like ancient sentinels and tapestries depicted the Empire's storied conquests, the High Command convened in a fortified war room. The chamber was a fortress of strategy, walls lined with massive maps of Europa's fractured borders, Ragnite-powered lamps casting a cold blue glow over tactical charts strewn with markers for troop deployments and Ragnite mines, and a central obsidian table etched with the Imperial eagle. The air hummed with the low thrum of ventilation systems, laced with the faint, acrid scent of polished steel and the ever-present mineral tang of Ragnite crystals embedded in the sconces. At the head of the table sat Emperor Adolfo Gaius von Regenrave, the Empire's supreme military leader, his sharp features framed by a high-collared uniform adorned with medals from border skirmishes. His eyes, cold and calculating like polished onyx, scanned the room with imperial authority. Flanking him were his key advisors, General Heinrich Stahl, a burly veteran with a scarred jaw and a reputation for ruthless efficiency in field operations, Admiral Isolde Brandt, commander of the Imperial Navy, her posture rigid and her voice carrying the clipped precision of a lifelong sailor, Colonel Victor Krauss, no relation to the spy in Goron, but a coincidence that had raised eyebrows, head of Imperial Intelligence, whose lean frame and wire-rimmed spectacles belied a mind as sharp as A. Bennett, and Minister Ilara Voss, a distant cousin to the Federation's attaché, though loyalties severed by borders, the Minister of Propaganda and Internal Affairs, her elegant demeanor masking a talent for weaving narratives that bent public will. The Emperor tapped a gloved finger on a fresh telegram, its encoded contents freshly deciphered. Gentlemen, Madam, our agent in Goron has pierced the veil. These interlopers from the West, styling themselves the United States of America, no phantom fleet or Federation ruse. Their vessels defy our engineers' wildest designs, smokeless behemoths with flat decks berthing metal birds that cleave the skies. They claim displacement from another world, a storm that hurled their entire nation into our Atlantis Ocean. Preposterous? Perhaps. But the evidence mounts. Yet, we know so little of them, their true capabilities, their intentions, their weaknesses. This ignorance is a blade at our throats. All we have are glimpses from Goron, strange ships docking, crowds gawking, and those impossible flying machines perched like predators. General Stahl leaned forward, his gravelly voice echoing off the stone walls. Our scouts confirm it, Your Excellency. From coastal watchtowers, we've glimpsed their silhouettes, no gun turrets like our dreadnoughts, yet bristling with unseen threats. And those flying machines, faster than our experimental biplanes, vanishing into clouds where eagles dare not. We understand nothing of how they function or what fuels them. If they ally with the Federation, our Ragnite offensives could crumble before they begin, all because we lack knowledge. Admiral Brandt nodded grimly, her fingers tracing naval routes on a map. The Atlantis is our lifeline to Vinland trade and potential incursions. These Americans sit astride it like a colossus, their bases sprouting on islands that were once barren rocks. No Ragnite dependency, from what Kraus reports, powered by some unknown sorcery we cannot fathom. Our fleets rely on blue fire, theirs sail eternally. A blockade or raid would be folly without understanding their defenses. Our ignorance leaves us blind in these waters. Colonel Kraus adjusted his spectacles, unfolding a sheaf of intercepted dispatches and grainy photographs smuggled from Goron, blurry images of the USS Enterprise's sleek hull and F-44 fighters on deck. Intelligence corroborates, Emperor. Their delegation arrived in Goron with ships that looked nothing like ours or the Federation's, flat tops for those metal birds, no smoke, no visible cannons. Terms like nuclear were whispered in the crowds, but they mean nothing to us. Our agent saw only what unfolded in the port, the awe of the people, the escort to Ramazel. We must learn more before they turn their unknown powers against us. Minister Voss interjected smoothly, her voice a silken thread weaving through the tension. Propaganda opportunities abound, Your Excellency. Paint these Americans as invaders from the void, demons in human guise, come to steal our Ragnite and thwart our rightful conquest of Europa. Rally the people against this external threat, diverting eyes from internal efficiencies. The Darksons serve the Empire, let us frame their labor as necessary fuel for our expansion across the continent. But to craft the perfect narrative, we need details, secrets only deeper surveillance can provide. The Emperor's lips curled into a predatory smile, though his eyes remained void of warmth. Astute, Minister. Our lack of understanding about these Americans is intolerable, it is the very reason we must keep a vigilant eye on them. Action first. We observe, not strike, yet. Colonel Kraus, expand your network, embed more agents in Goron and Ramazel. Infiltrate their joint surveys, steal samples of whatever fuels their wonders and blueprints of their designs to demystify their technologies. General Stahl, reinforce border garrisons, quietly. Admiral Brandt, dispatch submarine packs to shadow their fleets, map their patrols without engagement. And Minister Voss, so doubt, leaks to Vinland press, whispers in neutral ports. Let the Federation question their new allies' motives, while we prepare to seize the entire continent under our banner, armed with the knowledge we gather. General Stahl pounded a fist on the table, his enthusiasm barely contained. With eyes on them, we exploit weaknesses we currently cannot see. Their skies may be unchallenged, but our ground armies, tanks fueled by Ragnite, legions hardened by conquest, could overwhelm if they overextend, once we comprehend their full might. Admiral Brandt concurred. Subtlety now, thunder later. Their arrival disrupts the board, let us turn it to our advantage by piercing the veil of our ignorance. Colonel Kraus nodded, already mentally assigning operatives. Surveillance begins at dawn. We'll pierce their veil, learn their secrets, and transform our unknowns into weapons. Minister Voss added, and shape the narrative, the Empire as Europa's destined conqueror, unyielding against all foes, enlightened by the truths we uncover. Emperor Adolfo Gaius von Regenrave rose, signaling the end. Decided. We keep watch, hawks in the shadows, poised to claim what is ours once we know enough to strike true. Dismissed. As the advisors filed out, the war room's Ragnite lamps dimmed, casting long shadows that mirrored the Empire's growing intrigue. Across the Atlantis, the Americans built bridges, unaware of the eyes fixed upon them from the east. The game had evolved, pieces moved in silence. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7, Echoes of Innovation. May 15, 2040, 1934 Europan calendar. Ramazel, administrative capital of the Atlantic Federation. Europa continent. In the bustling diplomatic quarters of Ramazel, Ambassador Renato Wellington pored over a stack of intercepted broadcasts and intelligence reports in his makeshift office, a converted Federation guest suite adorned with ornate tapestries and Ragnite-lit sconces. The room hummed with the software of his Pip-Boy, projecting holographic summaries of the latest DIA feeds. Lieutenant Commander Aria Chen sat across from him, her fingers dancing over a Robco terminal as she cross-referenced data. Ambassador, we've got something big, Chen said, her voice laced with excitement. She swiped the screen, enlarging a translated European news bulletin. The Atlantic Federation News Network just announced it, the World Technology Exposition of 1934, hosted in Randgriz, the capital of the neutral Principality of Gallia, this summer. It's an annual event where the superpowers, Federation, Imperial Alliance, Finland, and Independence, showcase their latest innovations. Ragnite engines, prototype aircraft, armored vehicles, the works. A stage for bragging rights and subtle espionage. Renato leaned back, stroking his chin. The bulletin detailed pavilions from across the planet, Imperial Ragnite-fueled tanks rumbling in demonstrations, Federation naval models on display, Finland's agricultural mechanoids. A world's fair for tech? Perfect timing. Our surveys are yielding Ragnite data, but this could accelerate alliances, and give us a platform to dazzle them without revealing too much. He activated his satellite radio relay, patching through to Washington. President House, we've uncovered a major event, the 1934 World Technology Exposition in Randgriz, Principality of Gallia. Superpowers demo their tech. Requesting permission to petition for U.S. participation. We could demonstrate select robotics, non-military, to build goodwill. And perhaps expand to consumer electronics, televisions and computers, framed as educational tools. Back in the White House Situation Room, President House reviewed the intel on her holoscreen, the Europan date notation, 1934, flashing alongside Earth's calendar. Approved, Ambassador. Showcase the Mr. Handy and Protect ROM models only for robotics. For electronics, demonstrate basic televisions and computers, civilian models, no advanced military specs. Keep it focused on entertainment, education, and productivity. Dominate the narrative, show them what real innovation looks like. And Renato, emphasize shared prosperity. We want partners, not subjects. June 20, 2040, 1934 Europan calendar. World Technology Exposition grounds. Randgriz, Principality of Gallia. Europa continent. The exposition sprawled across Randgriz's verdant fairgrounds like a mechanical wonderland, towering pavilions of steel and glass, thrumming with Ragnite hums and the chatter of thousands. Delegations from the Atlantic Federation unveiled sleek steam turbines and prototype biplanes that barely skimmed the treetops, their engines sputtering blue Ragnite exhaust as they performed shaky loops for adoring crowds. Vinland's exhibits featured hardy tractors and bio-Ragnite fertilizers, promising bountiful harvests with minimal labor. The Imperial Alliance boasted massive armored behemoths, tanks with triple-barreled cannons, drawing crowds with thunderous engine roars that shook the ground and filled the air with acrid fumes. But the buzz centered on the newly added American Pavilion, a sleek, modular structure shipped in via the 10th Fleet, its fusion-powered lights casting an otherworldly glow that pulsed steadily without flicker or heat. Word had spread of the visitors from across Atlantis, and dignitaries, inventors, and spies alike flocked to see. The pavilion itself was a subtle marvel, assembled in hours by the American team using advanced tools, its walls embedded with interactive holographic panels that displayed educational videos on sustainable energy, drawing gasps even before the main demonstrations began. Gallian hosts, including Princess Cordelia Gi Randgriz herself, attending incognito amid her royal entourage, wandered the grounds, their neutral stance allowing them to observe without overt allegiance. Ambassador Wellington stood at the pavilion's entrance, flanked by a small team of engineers in crisp Robco jumpsuits. Prime Minister Leonard Duval and his Federation entourage mingled nearby, their Europan accents mixing with the crowd's murmurs. Duval, ever the pragmatist, eyed the structure with barely concealed envy. Ambassador, this pavilion alone outshines our entire naval display. How do you power those lights? No Ragnite crystals, no oil lamps, it's as if you've bottled the sun itself. Renato smiled diplomatically. Microfusion cells, Prime Minister. Clean, efficient, and long-lasting. We're happy to discuss limited exchanges once alliances deepen. Unbeknownst to most, Imperial agents, like the shadowy Victor Kraus, now posing as a Vinland merchant, lurked in the throng, notebooks hidden in their coats. Kraus's eyes darted nervously, his mind cataloguing every anomaly. Nearby, another Imperial operative, a young lieutenant disguised as a Gaulian journalist, whispered into a concealed radio, "The structure assembles itself." No workers, no cranes, just machines unfolding like living metal. This is beyond Federation prototypes. "Ladies and gentlemen of Europa and Vinland," Renato announced over a Robco amplifier, his voice echoing across the grounds with crystal clarity, free of the static that plagued local Ragnite speakers. The United States of America is honored to participate in this grand exposition. Today, we share glimpses of our advancements in robotics and electronics, tools for peace, prosperity, education, and entertainment. These are not weapons of war, but servants of humanity, designed to ease daily burdens and foster innovation. The crowd hushed as the demonstrations began, starting with consumer electronics to set the stage. First, a series of sleek Radiation King televisions were unveiled, flat panel screens no thicker than a painting, powered by compact fusion batteries. One engineer activated a unit, and it flickered to life instantly, displaying vibrant, high-definition footage of American landscapes, rolling hills, bustling cities, and even pre-recorded news reels from Earth. No bulky Ragnite projectors, no flickering images, just sharp, colorful visuals with sound emanating from built-in speakers, clear as a live conversation. Gasps erupted immediately. A Gaulian merchant, his eyes wide under a traditional beret, stepped closer. Moving pictures, in color? Without a theater's massive setup? This could bring stories to every home in Gallia. Princess Cordelia Gi Ran Grizz, observing from the crowd's edge, murmured to her aide, her voice a mix of wonder and strategic thought. "Imagine this for our people, education broadcasts, news from afar. No more relying on Ragnite radios with their crackling interference. The Americans, they are from another age." Gaulian engineers nearby nodded vigorously, one exclaiming, "Our crystal viewers are toys compared to this. Endless entertainment without recharging every hour." Federation reactions were equally fervent. Ms. Elizabeth Laurent leaned in, her notebook filling rapidly. "Televisions like these could transform our public information efforts. Crystal clear images, no distortion. We'd outpace imperial broadcasts overnight." Admiral Etienne Moreau chuckled in awe. "Think of Naval Command, real-time visuals from scouts, not grainy sketches. But how do they transmit without wires? Magic?" The Imperials, however, bristled with suspicion amid their shock. Kraus scribbled frantically. "Colored moving images on a portable screen? This could undermine our state-controlled media. If every citizen had one, our censors would be obsolete." His comrade whispered back, "Worse, propaganda from afar. The Emperor will see this as a threat to loyalty." Next, the computers took the stage, experimental Robco laptops, lightweight and portable, with transistor-based processors far beyond Europan mechanical calculators. An engineer demonstrated one, typing commands to solve complex mathematical equations in seconds, then pulling up interactive maps of Europa, zoomed in with pinpoint accuracy, overlaid with weather data. The screen glowed with a graphical interface, icons clickable via mouse device, allowing even novices to navigate files, draw diagrams, or play simple educational games. The audience's murmurs grew to exclamations. A Vinland farmer gaped. "It calculates harvests faster than a team of clerks. And draws maps that move." Gallians were particularly enthralled. A local inventor approached Renato afterward, stammering, "In Gallia, our abacuses and slide rules are relics next to this. Personal computation? It could revolutionize our mining operations, predict Ragnite yields without guesswork." Princess Cordelia's aide noted her subtle nod of approval. "Your Highness, this aligns with our neutrality, tools for progress, not conquest." Federation officials buzzed with ambition. Duval pulled Renato aside briefly. "Computers that think like minds? Our economists could model trade wars in minutes. But the portability, no massive Ragnite mainframes. We'd pay dearly for these." Laurent added, "Education alone, every school child with access to knowledge. Yet I fear the Imperials will steal designs." Imperial agents seethed in hushed tones. "Machines that compute instantly? Our codebreakers use rooms full of gears, This fits in a bag. Kraus muttered, his face ashen. Strategic planning, artillery calculations, they dominate battlefields. We must infiltrate and replicate, or destroy. The robotics capped the show. A Mr. Handy unit, its spherical body hovering silently on a single jet thruster, 3 flexible arms whirring with precision, glided onto the stage. Its 3-eye stalk scanned the audience, a polished British accented voice booming, "Cheerio. I'm Mr. Handy, at your service. Allow me to demonstrate." The robot seamlessly juggled tasks. One arm brewed tea from a portable condensator, producing purified water on demand from ambient moisture. Another repaired a mock-damaged gear with a built-in laser cutter that emitted a precise, hair-thin beam of light, and the third entertained a group of children with holographic projections of fairy tales, the images floating in mid-air like living dreams. No smoke, no ragnite fumes, just silent, efficient nuclear power sustaining it for years without refuel. The Handy even adapted on the fly, noticing a spilled drink in the crowd and zipping over to clean it with a gentle vacuum arm, eliciting laughter and applause. Gasps rippled through the audience. A Federation engineer whispered to Duval, "No exhaust? And those arms, finer control than our best machinists. Imagine this in our shipyards, repairs without halting production." Duval nodded, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and calculation. "Incredible. Our ragnite tools require constant recharging, but this, it thinks, adapts. We must secure an alliance before the Imperials do." Nearby, Miss Elizabeth Laurent, the attaché, scribbled furiously, her face flushed. This could revolutionize medicine, precise surgery without fatigue. But how do they control it? Voice commands? It's like a loyal butler from the legends. Galleons reacted with unbridled enthusiasm, their neutral pride in hosting the event amplified by the display. A Gallian soldier, off-duty and wide-eyed, turned to his companion. "Robots like that in our militia? They'd handle logistics, freeing us for defense. No more ragnite shortages mid-battle." Princess Cordelia G.I. Rangriz, stepping forward briefly to congratulate Renato, said softly, "Your Mr. Handy embodies efficiency Gallia strives for. Yet it hums with life, almost friendly. Our people would welcome such aids in homes and fields." The Imperials, however, reacted with outright alarm. Kraus's hand trembled as he sketched the Handy in his notebook. Autonomous flight without wings? Lasers for tools? This eclipses anything we have. His comrade, the disguised lieutenant, paled and muttered, "If they applied this to warfare, our tanks would be obsolete. Report to Schwarzgrad, Priority 1. These Americans are sorcerers in steel." Next came the Protectron, a bipedal robot with a domed head and 3 optic sensors glowing softly. Its alloy shell gleamed under the lights as it lumbered forward, manipulators extending. Protectron online. Commencing utility protocol, it intoned in a monotone voice, its movements smooth and deliberate. The robot showcased versatility, extinguishing a controlled fire with an integrated cryo emitter that sprayed a freezing mist, performing basic medical scans with a defibrillator arm that hummed with biofeedback data projected holographically, and assembling a simple structure from scattered parts with unerring accuracy. Its fission battery hummed quietly, promising endless operation in hazardous environments, far beyond the ragnite-dependent machines nearby. To highlight its durability, the engineers staged a mock disaster, dropping heavy debris on the Protectron, which shrugged it off with reinforced plating and continued working without a dent. The crowd erupted in awe. Vinland farmers marveled at the potential for field work without fatigue, one shouting, "That thing could plow fields all night, no breaks, no fuel runs." Federation officials scribbled notes furiously, envisioning integrations with their fleets. Admiral Etienne Moreau approached Renato afterward, his voice hushed with urgency. "Ambassador, this Protectron, impervious to fire, able to heal? Our naval crews suffer from ragnite burns daily. Share this, and the Federation will open its ports wide." Galleons clustered around, a local artisan exclaiming, "Durable as our fortress walls." In Gallia's minds, it could save lives from collapses, no more sending men into danger. Princess Cordelia's entourage buzzed, One advisor noted, this aligns with our defensive ethos, protection without aggression. But the power source, eternal? It defies our Ragnite limits. But the Imperials, Kraus and his concealed comrades, were the most stunned. Their faces paled as they watched the robots operate with autonomy bordering on sentience, no visible power sources tethering them. Impossible, Kraus muttered, his mind racing with reports for Schwarzgrad. These machines think? Hover without Ragnite? Endure punishment that would shatter our armor? The High Command must know, this could eclipse our tanks, our entire doctrine. Another agent, sweating under his disguise, added, they are not just tools, they are guardians. If armed, we'd face an army that never tires, never fears. We need samples, steal one if we must. As the demonstrations concluded to thunderous applause, Renato shook hands with Duval and exchanged polite nods with Gaulian dignitaries amid a flurry of questions and offers. A new era of collaboration, he said, while whispers of American dominance spread like wildfire. The televisions, computers, and robots had stolen the show, igniting Federation ambitions for a technological renaissance, fostering Gaulian admiration for neutral progress, and planting seeds of envy and fear in Imperial hearts. Yet beneath the wonder, tension simmered, the Imperials' stunned silence masked plots already forming in the shadows of Schwarzgrad. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8, Whispers of War. June 25, 2040, 1934 Europan calendar. Imperial Palace, Schwarzgrad, capital of the East Europan Imperial Alliance. Europa continent. In the dimly lit war room of the Imperial Palace, the air hung heavy with the scent of aged leather and smoldering Ragnite incense, a ritual to invoke the spirits of ancient conquerors. The chamber's obsidian table gleamed under the cold blue light of embedded crystals, now cluttered with smuggled photographs, hastily sketched diagrams, and transcribed eyewitness accounts from the World Technology Exposition in Randgriz. Agents like Victor Kraus had risked exposure to capture every detail, their reports arriving via encrypted couriers mere days after the event. The High Command assembled in tense silence, the weight of the revelations pressing upon them like an unseen storm. At the head of the table sat Emperor Adolfo Gaius von Regenrave, his regal form rigid in a throne-like chair, the imperial eagle embroidered on his cape catching the flickering light. His face, usually a mask of unyielding resolve, betrayed a flicker of unease as he sifted through the documents. Flanking him were his trusted advisors, General Heinrich Stahl, his massive frame hunched over sketches of hovering robots, Admiral Isolde Brandt, her naval charts pushed aside in favor of blurry images of flat-decked ships, Colonel Victor Kraus, fresh from his undercover stint in Randgriz, his spectacles reflecting the room's glow as he arranged grainy photographs, and Minister Ilara Voss, her elegant fingers drumming lightly on a propaganda draft, her mind already spinning ways to twist the narrative. The Emperor cleared his throat, breaking the oppressive quiet. Colonel Kraus, begin your debrief. Spare no detail. Our agents' eyes in Randgriz have seen impossibilities. Let us confront them. Kraus nodded gravely, his voice steady but laced with the awe he had suppressed during the exposition. He spread out the photographs first, fuzzy but unmistakable images of the American pavilion, its sleek lines and glowing panels alien amid the Ragnite-belching exhibits of Europa. Your Excellency, the Americans' displays were unlike anything in our arsenals or those of the Federation. They unveiled televisions, portable screens that project moving images in vivid color, without Ragnite crystals or massive projectors. Crowds watched landscapes and stories unfold as if peering through windows to another world. No static, no fumes, just clarity that shamed our state broadcasters. The room fell deathly silent. General Stahl stared at a sketch of the television, his scarred jaw slack. Admiral Brandt's eyes widened, her mind racing to naval applications, real-time scouting feeds without distortion. Minister Voss leaned forward, her composure cracking for the first time, lips parted but no words emerging. The Emperor himself gripped the table's edge, his onyx eyes fixed on the image, the predatory gleam replaced by rare, unfiltered shock. For a long moment, no one spoke, the only sound was the faint hum of the Ragnite lamps, mirroring the silent power sources described in the reports. Kraus continued, his tone measured to mask his own disbelief. Then came the computers, compact machines that compute equations in seconds, draw interactive maps, and even simulate games or models. They fit in a satchel, operated by a mouse or device, solving problems that require our rooms of gear-driven calculators. Witnesses saw one predict weather patterns over Europa with pinpoint accuracy, far beyond our meteorologists' wildest capabilities. Again, silence enveloped the room. Stahl's fist clenched involuntarily, crumpling an edge of paper. He had envisioned such devices revolutionizing artillery calculations, but now they were in enemy hands. Brandt whispered almost to herself, endless navigation without charts, eternal power. Voss's elegant features paled, her propaganda expertise faltering at the thought of unfiltered information flooding imperial homes. The Emperor's breath caught, his mind reeling from the implications: strategic planning, code breaking, resource allocation, all transformed overnight. The High Command, masters of conquest, sat speechless, the weight of their technological inferiority crashing down like a tidal wave. Undeterred, Krauss pressed on, unveiling sketches of the robots. The climax, they're Mr. Handy and Protect Ron. The Handy hovers without wings or Ragnite exhaust, propelled by an invisible force. 3 arms juggle tasks, brewing tea from thin air, repairing machinery with a beam of light like a surgeon's scalpel, projecting illusions in mid-air for entertainment. It adapts, cleans spills, responds to voices. No fatigue, no refueling for years. The Protectron, bipedal and armored, extinguishes fires with freezing mist, scans for injuries, assembles structures unerringly. Debris crushed against it left no mark, impervious, eternal. This time, the silence stretched into an eternity. Stahl's burly frame slumped, his gravelly voice failing him as he traced the Handy's jet thruster in the drawing. Brandt's rigid posture cracked, her hand covering her mouth in stunned realization of fleets maintained by tireless machines. Krauss himself paused, the memory vivid enough to choke his words. Voss stared blankly, her narrative-weaving talent overwhelmed, how to spin demons as mere tools. Emperor von Regenrave, the King of Kings, leaned back slowly, his sharp features etched with a rare vulnerability. The room's air thickened, the High Command left utterly without words, their ambitions dwarfed by innovations that defied the laws of their world. Finally, the Emperor broke the hush, his voice low and edged with fury. These abominations eclipse our might. Televisions to poison minds, computers to outthink our generals, robots to render our legions obsolete. We cannot allow this. Our conquest of Europa demands we possess such wonders, or destroy them. General Stahl found his voice, hoarse with determination. Your Excellency, we must act. Their ignorance of our ways is our edge. Reports place their Alaska outpost, a northern enclave, isolated and lightly defended, mere miles from their mainland but vulnerable by sea. A swift strike, naval assault, ground forces to seize prototypes, extract scientists. Steal their secrets, reverse their sorcery for imperial tanks and fleets. Admiral Brandt nodded sharply, recovering her composure. Submarine packs to shadow, then surface for bombardment. Our dreadnoughts can overwhelm their flat-deck behemoths if we strike first. Capture those fusion cells, those lasers, turn them against the Federation. Colonel Krauss interjected, his intellect sharpening the plan. Infiltrate during chaos, agents to pilfer blueprints, sabotage what we cannot take. Their moral posturing on dark suns blinds them to our resolve. Minister Voss, regaining her silkiness, added, frame it as a defensive probe, propaganda will call it reclaiming Ragnite from interlopers. Rally the people, these Americans threaten our destiny. The Emperor rose, his predatory smile returning, colder than before. Decided. Prepare the assault on Alaska. We strike at dawn in 2 weeks, seize their technologies, or burn them to ash. Europa will bow to us, armed with their own miracles. As the advisors dispersed to mobilize, the war room's shadows deepened, the decision igniting the first sparks of open conflict. Across the Atlantis, the Americans forged alliances, oblivious to the hawks circling their northern flank. The game had shifted from observation to aggression. End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9, Veiled Maneuvers Unveiled. July 1, 2040. White House Situation Room, Washington, D.C. United States of America. The Situation Room pulsed with urgency, holographic displays flickering with real-time feeds from orbital satellites and encrypted DIA channels. President Cordelia Angela Turing House stood at the forefront, her analytical gaze dissecting the layered projections, thermal signatures of Imperial naval vessels slicing through northern waters, troop concentrations along Europa's eastern coasts, and intercepted chatter hinting at mobilization. Dr. Nagel manipulated the controls, zooming in on a cluster of submarines and dreadnoughts veering westward, toward the American state of Alaska, now an island enclave a few miles to the north of the mainland, its position confirmed by post-displacement surveys. Director Hale, confirm the intel, the president demanded, her voice steady amid the room's tense hum. Director Margaret Hale nodded, her Pip-Boy syncing with the main screen to overlay agent reports. Madam President, our satellites detected anomalous Ragnite emissions from Imperial ports 3 days ago, consistent with fleet preparations. High-resolution imaging shows dreadnoughts loaded with assault troops, submarines running silent toward Atlantis, coordinates aligning with Alaska's new position. DIA agents embedded in Ramazel and Gorin intercepted whispers, our swift strike, to seize wonders from the void. They've pieced it together, targeting Alaska for our tech. No doubt now, it's an invasion force. The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the soft beeps of incoming data. General Russell Ward leaned forward, his brow furrowed. They are underestimating our defenses. Alaska's got coastal batteries, but it's exposed. We can reposition assets, satellites for targeting, drones for recon. President House's mind raced, calculating risks and alliances. Stephen, get me Prime Minister Duval on the secure line. General Ward, mobilize the 20th Fleet, full complement, carriers, destroyers, subs. They are to defend Alaska at all costs. Reinforce with air wings from the mainland. Dr. Nagel, reassign satellites for continuous overwatch, jam their comms if needed. As orders flew, the holographic link to Ramazel established, Prime Minister Leonard Duval's face materializing on screen, his Europan accent thick with concern. Madam President, your urgent hail, trouble. Prime Minister, our intelligence confirms an Imperial assault on our Alaskan state. They are after our technology. We're deploying defenses, but I request Federation observers, your officers aboard our ships. Witness the battle, see our capabilities firsthand. In return, joint intel on Imperial movements. Duval paused, consulting off-screen advisors, Ms. Elizabeth Laurent and Admiral Etienne Moreau among them. The Federation's curiosity burned bright, the exposition's wonders had whetted their appetite for more. Televisions, computers, robots, these were glimpses, a live demonstration against the Empire could reveal naval prowess, fusion drives, perhaps even those elusive lasers. And observing the Imperial Navy in action? Priceless for their own border skirmishes. We accept, Madam President, Duval replied firmly. Admiral Moreau and a team will rendezvous with your fleet. For the Federation, this is enlightening. May it forge our bonds stronger. The link severed, President House turned to her team. They want intel on us and the Imperials. Fine, let them see enough to ally, not enough to replicate. This ends the shadows, war knocks. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Nimitz, flagship of the 20th Fleet. En route to Alaskan waters. Captain Roberts Peterson commanded from the bridge, the nuclear carrier slicing through Atlantis waves at flank speed. Destroyers fanned out in formation, submarines lurking below, F-44 fighters prepped on deck. Admiral Moreau's Federation contingent boarded via helicopter, their eyes wide at the seamless operations, radar arrays sweeping horizons, holographic tactical displays updating in real time, no Ragnite smoke choking the air. Welcome aboard, Admiral, Peterson greeted, extending a hand. You'll see American ingenuity up close. Moreau nodded, masking his awe. Your ship's eternal vigilance. We learn much today, about you, and our common foe. As the fleet closed on Alaska, satellites beamed warnings, Imperial forces inbound, dreadnought cannons priming. The stage set for clash, Federation observers poised to witness the unveiling of worlds colliding. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10, Thunder from the Void. July 15, 2040, 1934 Europan calendar. Northern reaches of the Atlantis Ocean. Approaching Alaskan territorial waters. The vast expanse of the Atlantis Ocean stretched like a sapphire shroud under a steel-gray sky, its waves cresting in rhythmic defiance against the gathering storm of war. To the north, the jagged silhouette of Alaska's coastline loomed, a rugged bastion of snow-capped peaks and fortified bays, now an isolated sentinel in this alien world. American defenses bristled along its shores, coastal missile batteries humming with fusion-powered readiness, radar arrays sweeping the horizon like unblinking eyes, and squadrons of F-44 fighters patrolling the skies in tight, predatory formations. The 20th Fleet, anchored in a defensive arc just offshore, formed an unbreakable wall, the nuclear behemoths USS Nimitz and USS Eisenhower at its core, their flat decks alive with the thunderous roar of jet engines spooling up, sleek Arleigh Burke-class destroyers flanking them, vertical launch systems primed with Tomahawk cruise missiles, Virginia-class submarines ghosting beneath the waves, their sonar pings mapping the seafloor like whispers of doom, and Ohio-class boomers lurking in the depths, their ballistic silos a silent promise of Armageddon if pressed too far. Aboard the Nimitz bridge, Captain Peterson gripped the tactical rail, his eyes locked on the forward holoscreens. The Imperial invasion force had materialized on the horizon like ghosts from a bygone age, a hulking armada of 20 dreadnoughts and heavy cruisers, their riveted hulls scarred by years of Ragnite-fueled patrols, towering superstructures crowned with massive 406mm gun turrets that could hurl shells the weight of a small car across miles of open water. Flotillas of destroyers and torpedo boats darted in their wakes, smokestacks belching thick plumes of blue-tinged exhaust that stained the sky. No aircraft marred their decks, only anti-aircraft guns and searchlights, relics of a doctrine built on surface gunnery and brute force. Leading the charge was the EIS Ironclad, Emperor von Regenrave's personal flagship, a leviathan of blackened steel emblazoned with the Imperial two-headed eagle, commanded by Admiral Isolde Brandt herself, a woman whose reputation for unyielding aggression had carved her name into Europa's bloody annals. Federation observers, Admiral Etienne Moreau and a cadre of wide-eyed officers, clustered at the bridge's observation gallery, their wool greatcoats stark against the Nimitz's sterile chrome. Moreau's face was a mask of calculated fascination, his notebook forgotten in his lap as he absorbed the American war machine, holographic threat boards updating in real time, fusion reactors purring without a whisper of heat, crews moving with the precision of clockwork automatons. "Your fleet, it breathes like a living thing," he murmured to Captain Peterson's, his Europan accent thick with reluctant awe. "No smoke, no clamor. How do you command such silence?" Peterson's offered a tight smile, his voice low. "Efficiency, Admiral. An overwhelming force when needed. Watch closely, this is how we protect what's ours." The holoscreens flickered as the communications officer patched through an open-frequency hail, broadcasting President House's final ultimatum in crisp, multilingual bursts, English, Europan, even rudimentary Vinlandic dialects gleaned from intercepts. "This is the United States Navy, 20th Fleet. Imperial vessels, you are entering sovereign American waters with hostile intent. Reverse course immediately. Any advance will be met with lethal force. This is your one and only warning. Peace is still possible." Static crackled across the bridge speakers, then the Imperial response boomed through, Admiral Brandt's voice, amplified from the ironclad's bridge, laced with scorn and the guttural edge of her native tongue, translated seamlessly by Robco linguistics. Laughter echoed in the background, the jeers of her officers filtering through like the prelude to a storm. "Peace? From upstart phantoms who peddle parlor tricks in Gaulian fairgrounds. The East Europan Imperial Alliance bows to no void-born interlopers. Our dreadnoughts have shattered Federation lines and drowned Vinland pretenders in Ragnite fire. Your warning is but wind on the waves, the Empire is invincible. We come not for parley, but for your stolen miracles. Surrender your flat-deck abominations and sky demons, or watch your frozen rock burn under our guns." The line went dead. On the holoscreens, the Imperial fleet surged forward, battle flags snapping in the wind, main batteries traversing with mechanical groans audible even at range. Salvos erupted from the lead dreadnoughts, massive shells arcing skyward in fiery parabolas, screaming toward the American line like vengeful comets. The first impacts churned the ocean into geysers mere miles short, the concussive blasts shaking the waves and sending spray cascading over the Nimitz deck. Hostiles firing, range 25 miles, the tactical officer intoned calmly. Recommend immediate counter. Captain Peterson's eyes hardened. All stations, engage at will. Launch air wing, Alpha strike. Subs, torpedo spread on the heavies. Destroyers, tomahawk salvo on escorts. Let's show them the cost of arrogance. Alarms wailed across the fleet as the American response ignited, a symphony of technological fury that transformed the sea into a cauldron of annihilation. From the Eisenhower's deck, squadrons of P-61 bombers, sleek, fusion-augmented beasts with variable sweep wings and precision-guided munitions, hurtled into the sky, afterburners igniting in brilliant blue flames that outshone the Imperial smoke. They climbed effortlessly to 30,000 feet, far beyond the reach of the enemy's primitive flak guns, their bomb bays yawning open to unleash a rain of Mk-84 laser-guided bombs and AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles. The projectiles streaked downward like divine judgment, homing in on thermal signatures with unerring accuracy, slamming into dreadnought bridges and magazines with surgical precision. Explosions bloomed across the Imperial line like apocalyptic flowers, orange fireballs erupting from armored citadels, secondary detonations ripping hulls asunder in chain reactions of Ragnite-fueled infernos. The EIS Thunderer, a proud heavy cruiser, took a direct hit to her forward turret, the 406mm guns vaporized in a cataclysmic blast that sheared the bow clean off, the twisted wreckage plunging into the depths with a thunderous roar that echoed for miles. Crewmen aboard the doomed vessel leaped into the churning sea, their screams lost amid the cacophony as the ship listed and sank, bow first, in under 2 minutes. Beneath the waves, the Virginia-class submarines struck like shadows given fangs. USS Texas, prowling silently at periscope depth, loosed a spread of Mk-48 ADCAP torpedoes, wire-guided hunters with active sonar wakes that snaked through the Imperial formation unerringly. The torpedoes found their marks on the destroyer screens, one slammed into the flank of the EIS Vanguard, the supercavitating warhead punching through riveted plating like paper before detonating in the engine rooms. Ragnite turbines erupted in a geyser of blue plasma, the destroyer's magazine cooking off in a series of bone-shattering blasts that hurled debris skyward like shrapnel confetti. Sister subs followed suit, torpedoes weaving past desperate countermeasures to eviscerate the Imperial Vanguard, 8 destroyers and 4 cruisers consigned to the abyss in the opening minutes, their hulls crumpling under hydrostatic shocks that pulped crews in steel tombs. The destroyers of the 20th Fleet added their crescendo, railgun batteries chattering with hypersonic rounds that punched through armor at Mach 7, while VLS cells belched tomahawks in rippling salvos. The cruise missiles skimmed the waves at treetop height, evading flak bursts with terrain-following precision before slamming into superstructure after superstructure. The EIS Colossus, a behemoth second only to the Ironclad, shuddered under a barrage of 20 missiles, impacts riddled her from stem to stern, igniting fuel bunkers and Ragnite stores in a fireball that lit the northern sky like a second dawn. The dreadnought rolled belly up, her guns firing wildly into the air as she capsized, dragging 1,200 souls into the frigid embrace of the deep. From the Nimitz bridge, the Federation observers watched in mounting horror, their faces drained of color as the holoscreens relayed drone feeds of the carnage. Admiral Moreau gripped the rail until his knuckles whitened, his notebook slipping to the deck unnoticed. Mon Dieu, it's not a battle. It's execution. A young lieutenant beside him retched into a waste bin, unable to stomach the sight of Imperial sailors flailing amid oil-slicked waters, boats splintered by strafing runs from F-44s that dove like eagles to rake the decks with 20mm cannon fire. The fighters, untouchable in their altitude, circled the fleet like vultures, their Sidewinder missiles claiming any destroyer foolish enough to pursue, locks acquired in seconds, infrared seekers drinking in the heat of Ragnite exhaust before detonating in fireballs that bisected hulls mid-charge. It's over before it begins, Moreau whispered, his voice breaking as another dreadnought, the EIS Fury, erupted in a mushroom cloud of debris, her stern sheared away by a submarine torpedo that broached the surface in a plume of foam. Bodies rained into the sea, mingled with shattered steel and flickering ragnite crystals that ignited floating slicks into hellish pyres. The Imperial returned fire. Sporadic salvos from surviving guns splashed harmlessly against the American armor, CIWS Gatling guns chewing incoming shells into confetti before they could detonate. Not a single U.S. vessel was scratched. The destroyers danced through the barrage with countermeasures, dodging Imperial attacks into blindness. Aboard the ironclad, Admiral Brandt clung to her command perch amid the chaos, the Bridger inferno of sparks and screams as near misses rocked the ship. Alarms wailed, damage reports flooding in, forward turrets silenced, engine rooms flooding, half her escorts gone in the blink of an eye. Fight on! For the Emperor, she bellowed, her voice raw over the din, but her eyes betrayed the dawning terror. These were not ships of wood and iron, but engines of apocalypse. A harpoon skimmed her deck house, exploding against the aft stack and venting ragnite vapors that choked the air. The ironclad listed, her vaunted invincibility crumbling as the last of her squadron dissolved into smoke and wreckage. 99% of the Imperial Armada lay broken on the ocean floor, 18 dreadnoughts and cruisers reduced to smoldering hulks, their crews' cries fading into the waves, destroyers scattered like driftwood, torpedo boats pulverized before they could lose a single fish. Only the ironclad survived, her hull holed and afire, limping eastward on auxiliary power as Brandt ordered a desperate retreat. All hands to damage control. Signal Schwarzgrad, retreat. The void, it devours. As the battle's echoes faded, the sea littered with flotsam, all sheens iridescent under the sun, Captain Peterson's turned to the stunned Federation contingent. Casualties, 0 on our side. There's total. This is modern naval warfare, Admiral. Precision. Overmatch. We don't seek it, but we end it decisively. Moreau staggered back, crossing himself instinctively, his worldview shattered by the asymmetry, the thunderous guns of Europa rendered impotent against skies commanded by jets and seas ruled by ghosts. Horror, pure horror. Your power, it's the wrath of gods. The Empire will reel from this, but so will we all. What have we invited into our world? The 20th Fleet reformed, fighters resuming patrol as salvage drones skimmed the waves to recover black boxes and ragnite samples and survivors' rescues. Across the Atlantis, word of the massacre rippled outward, alliances tempered by awe, enemies forged in fear. The Valkyria Wars had claimed their first blood, and the ocean ran red with the old world's illusions. End of Chapter 10.